This is Goku's son, DBZ, and welcome back to a new Top 5 Fighters list. This time is Top 5, of course, fighting games of the 6th console generation. And of course, that entails specifically 4 consoles in this generation. That being, of course, the Sega Dreamcast, the PS2, the Nintendo GameCube, and the original Xbox. So with that said, first some honorable mentions that didn't quite make cut. In my opinion, this is maybe the best generation in fighting games. Well, between the 5th and the 6th. But yeah, I feel the 6th is maybe the best console generation, not only in consoles, but in fighting games as well. For the most part. With that said, honorable mentions didn't quite make the cut, unfortunately. First up is Soul Calibur 2. I chose, of course, just to show the GameCube box. One, because I know there's a lot of Link fans out there. Unfortunately, I currently do not have the case to my Xbox version, unfortunately. With said, an incredible game, of course, released on 3 consoles, an exclusive character for each, and obviously, who got the Nintendo version? Link. Next honorable mention, I feel a criminally underrated game, unfortunately, released on the PlayStation 2, of course, and that is Virtua Fighter 4, though this is the ultimate version of Virtua Fighter 4, Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution. It is, unfortunately, a criminally underrated game, and in my opinion, is kind of between Virtua Fighter 2, though, and Virtua Fighter 3, in my opinion, for being the best Virtua Fighter. But Virtua Fighter 4 is still a really top-notch, good 3D fighter. It's unfortunate that this game gets overlooked a lot when it comes to mentioning good fighting games. But in my opinion, definitely deserves an honorable mention. Next honorable mention, technically have multiple versions, but I chose to show, of course, the original version on the Sega Dreamcast. And of course, that being Dead or Alive 2, which in my opinion is the second best of the DOA series, in my opinion. Or tied for being the second best game in the franchise. But I actually personally, this is probably my favorite version of Dead or Alive 2, interestingly. My least favorite version is Dead or Alive 2 Hardcore on the PS2. I actually do like the remastered version, Ultimate, or Dead or Alive Ultimate Volume 2 as it's called. But still, I feel Dead or Alive 2 on the Dreamcast is the best version. But, to each their own, but definitely a great 3D fighter and amazing soundtrack. Next up, a criminally underrated and overlooked fighting game from this generation, honorable mention, is actually the very first, to my knowledge, 3D game in the King of Fighters franchise. And actually, believe it or not, this was the very first King of Fighters game I ever actually bought myself, was this game. Was the very first KOF game I would ever own. I played KOF, King of Fighters, of course, 95 and 97 and stuff, off and on. Later on I played, and eventually, believe it or not, after this though, I would end up getting the Dreamcast game, which, in my opinion, is probably the best of the 2D KOF games, in my opinion. But I actually feel this game is definitely criminally underrated. Yeah, it's not the greatest gameplay. Being the first 3D game in the series still, I think it did a lot to help evolution-wise for the franchise. It's sad a lot of people never talk about this game in the series, Maximum Impact. This, in my opinion, is maybe one of the most underrated games in the entire franchise of Street Fighter. Honorable mention, and that is Street Fighter EX3. People don't realize how good the combat system actually is in this game, and all the special abilities and things you can do in this game. I mean, for a long time, people just bashed this game and then praised the second game in the series, much like Maximilian dude, until Max realized what I have realized for years at how fun genuinely the gameplay is in this game. Once you realize how the combo systems and everything mechanically works in this game, it is a blast to play. Seriously, you cannot never have like a single playthrough of this game and not have a blast if you know how to use the mechanics. That's the key, though, to this specific Street Fighter game. Much like, of course, mechanically, I understand the mechanics this better than I do in Third Strike. I suck with the parry system. No matter, unfortunately, that's a system I will probably never really get really good at. I mean, I may eventually get better at the basics, but I will never truly be good at the parry system in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Last of the honorable mentions technically is a pair. Of course, the often praised Tekken 5. And strangely enough, believe it or not, I actually own 2 copies of Tekken 5. That's a long story, but still an incredible game and maybe one of the best soundtracks in the franchise. And last honorable mention is, in my opinion, the criminally underrated Tekken 4. Because you could tell they were already testing prototypes and stuff mechanically in this game from the way it worked and the interactions with, of course, like the surrounding stage and stuff, like impact to like walls and stuff, was an introduction that started in this game, and this game is a lot of fun, and the Tekken Force mode is a blast. Now, let's get on to the actual list, shall we? Coming in at number 5, for a long time was my favorite in the Mortal Kombat franchise, up until Mortal Kombat X, which dethroned this game for being my favorite of the MK series. Still holds my number 2 spot, though. And that is, in my opinion, the best game easily of this era of Mortal Kombat. And that is, coming at number 5, Mortal Kombat Deception. Of course, the Mileena edition of the game. And of course, Collector, spelled with a K. Of course, cheesy tradition in Mortal Kombat. But this game is just so much fun to play, honestly, and the fact that you get a bonus disc with this version of the game of MK1 that you can actually play on Xbox. And that's pretty cool, honestly, if you ask me. Plus, you have awesome stuff like puzzle combat, kart combat, and my personal favorite, chess combat. Mortal Kombat version of chess, it is fun. I mean, seriously, you never would have thought of mixing Mortal Kombat and chess together, but believe it or not, it's actually an awesome, really fun blast mix. But seriously, number 5, you can't go wrong with Mortal Kombat Deception. Coming in at number 4 is, in my opinion, the best game in the Dead or Alive franchise. At least to me personally. This is one of the games that got me to buy an original Xbox in the first place. But, interestingly, it was a launch title on top of it, which is cool. And of course, that being, I still have the original, but it stopped working, unfortunately, which is why I ended up having to pick up a Platinum Hits version, which was a little bit cheaper. But still, nevertheless, incredible game. Dead or Alive 3 is, as I said, in my opinion, the best of the Dead or Alive franchise as a whole. Though, second place goes back and forth between Dead or Alive 2 and Dead or Alive 5. Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of DOA 5. But DOA 3 is easily the pinnacle of the franchise, and was a reason to buy an original Xbox, was for this incredible fighting game. And easily one of the best 3D fighters of all time, in my opinion. I mean, there's really no doubt. The game is a blast, the soundtrack is superb, the characters are great, and I just love the overall solid gameplay to this series. It's, I mean, to this day, off and on, I will actually still play DOA 3. That's how good a game is. This many years later, and I'm still playing it. That should say something. I've been playing this game for about 17 to 18 years. Should say something right there about the gameplay. But anyways, comes in at number 4 for the 6th console generation. Next up, coming at number 3, I couldn't choose, it was tough, so it ended up a tie. So with that said, the tie for 3rd place is between first. I misplaced, unfortunately, my Xbox version of Capcom vs. SNK 2 EO. I also have digital version as well of the game, but I figured I'd pull out my physical Japanese import version for the Sega Dreamcast. And yeah, as you see there, this is actually factory sealed still. Never been opened, which is awesome. And I absolutely had to eventually get my hands on a Dreamcast copy of the game, because to me it's a crowning jewel for any fan of the crossover series, especially the best of the games, of course. And I mean, seriously, Capcom vs. SNK 2 is incredible, not to mention it gave us 2 of the greatest bosses in fighting games ever, of course, crossover-wise. Shin Akuma and God Rugal. Epic bosses. But this is tied at number 3. Who is it tied with? Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Or, sorry, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Was it Marvel vs. Capcom 2? New Age of Heroes. Sorry. But anyways, tie at number 3 between easily probably the golden age of the crossover series with these 2 incredible games. And yeah, this isn't the original case, this was a special remake or replicate case I ordered on eBay. Along with Marvel vs. Capcom 1, also got one of these cases for it too. Still, incredible game, great jazzy blues soundtrack, you can't go wrong there. Coming in at number 2, I unfortunately couldn't find the regular version of the game, so instead I chose the HD game version. Coming at number 2, Tekken Tag Tournament. Of course, I'm using the Tekken Hybrid game case instead, but Tekken Tag Tournament 1 is incredible, and for me personally, is pretty much my favorite of the Tekken franchise as a whole. Well, it's between Tekken Tag and Tekken 3 for being my favorite Tekken game. Still, you can't go wrong. Tekken Tag Tournament is so much fun. I mean, the great different team-ups, especially the cool final boss Unknown, and I love the soundtrack to Tekken Tag Tournament. It's actually one of the few games I actually went out of my way to buy actual physical copy of the soundtrack. There's only a handful of games I've actually gone out of my way, let alone a fighting game soundtrack at that. There's only a few games I actually own physical soundtracks of. This being one of those few. Along with also maybe another little soundtrack. Anyways, with that said, what is number 1? Well, you hear music in the background from number 1 favorite fine game of this generation, and overall is my favorite 3D fighting game of all time. Number 1 favorite fighting game of the 6th console generation, the original Soul Calibur. Which, of course, this is the Japanese import version of the game that you see, because I wanted to end up having a Japanese version and the English version. I just felt wanting to have both versions of the game. Plus, there's a few special secret codes I know about with the Japanese version that won't work on the American version. So, with that said, coming at number 1, easily for me, in my opinion, the best fighting game of the 6th console generation, Soul Calibur 1 for the original Sega Dreamcast. And I hope you enjoyed this countdown list. Leave a comment below. What was your favorite fighting game of the 6th console generation? And specifically, what was your favorite of the 4 consoles of the 6th generation to play those fighting games on? Because you had so many great fighting games on all of those platforms. Though I felt the Dreamcast and the Xbox definitely had quite a handful of great titles, though the PlayStation 2 had quite a few good solo or specific titles that specialized to that. GameCube had a few, but not nearly the variety of the others. But to me, the Dreamcast was a fighting game dream machine, in my personal opinion, like the Sega Saturn was. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time.